to my favorite part of the presentation, and I'm hoping that he gets your attention like he did mine a year ago. But David Bowman's here. He'd come on up. That beautiful bow tie, sir. Appreciate that.
And he's smiling.
Yeah, there you go. He's our Systems and Security Manager at Jordan School District, and he's also, are you the chair of the UTCC?
Yeah, the cybersecurity chair.
Cybersecurity chair?
Yeah.
So just so everybody understands on the task force, these are the guys that do this every day in our districts and across the state. So thank you for being here. They've been working on these recommendations for about 7 months, if not longer.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys taking the chance to give us the time. I feel like I get to go after everybody having stolen what was on my slides. Right? But one thing that's a big piece to kind of understand of what this looks like for us is, to Representative Wilcox's explanation, we, as the Technology Coordinator Council, are the folks that make it work when we get direction and implementations and audits of how do we make it work. So when we kind of come up with these are the things that we think we need, our focus on that concept is the fact that it's also a consensus. So that's working with all of the districts, working with UEN, working with USBE. Somebody even asked the other day if we'd had a pre-look at the legislative auditor's finding because everything seemed to be pretty close to in line. We didn't, but that does tell us about some of the facts that these recommendations are pretty universal on the things that we need. One of the things that always kind of surprises people when I talk to them is actual numbers behind what does this mean that we're being attacked as school districts. So just to put a number to it, we see 10 million attacks a day just for our education networks here in Utah.
Go ahead and repeat that again for everyone.
10 million a day.
Yeah.
So it's not a little thing.
Yeah.
But those range from sometimes folks in their basement trying to hack things, but just as often criminal gangs and sophisticated nation-state threat actors trying to penetrate what we have going on. The downside of that is they only have to be right once, and we have to be right every single time. As was mentioned a little bit before, just based on incidents in the last year and a half, we have something around 600,000 students in the state of Utah. More than half of their data has been impacted due to cybersecurity incidents. And that helps us all lose sleep at night and worry about how we can best protect them. And what used to be the security guy was a thing that also did the things. It has become a need in order to succeed to be dedicated to that. Even in Jordan School District, where I work with a very large district, my title is also systems and security. So while security is where I spend a lot of my time working, even in a large district with additional resources, it's still challenging to have that dedicated staffing for what that looks like. Because of the awesome things we do to work together, whether it be with the network that we do with UEN or a lot of the collaborations we do on state systems, because of our tight knittedness with that, one of the downsides of that is a single site having an issue can put us all at risk in several ways. And because of that, it's not just a question of we need to lift the standard for districts as they're getting to it. Rather, it's an issue of we're all at risk all the way down to the lowest person on the pole of where we get to. Ultimately, it's funny, if you ask a cybersecurity person, what are the things that we can do in order to impact cybersecurity and make change? There's a list of they mentioned auditing. There's a list of 60, 80 different things. And for us, part of our focus in our conversations and working together as teams was based on if we had to choose just 8, what are the ones that we feel can be most impactful or also at the same time tie to the best things to kind of help reinforce that. So I did provide a handout with a little bit of an explanation to kind of each of these. When we mention strong authentication, by that we mean multi-factor authentication. We kind of have hope and belief that maybe these things will get adopted as a standard and security evolves. So we figured we'd use a word that wasn't too specific so it could last forever. But as we look at that, to the point that I think we've now seen mentioned multiple times, the cyber defense staffing is just one of the biggest challenges. In order for us to succeed in both the technical aspects, but in order to change those cultural aspects, it takes a cyber advocate within institutions. It was suggested that my Cyberman cape, this probably wasn't the right environment to wear my Cyberman cape, but just as an example, in an LEA, that's the type of silliness or behavior you need to help drive that. So at Jordan, we have Cybersecurity Man, and he wears his cape and goes around and reminds people about cybersecurity principles. Those are the types of things that help move those needles forward as we do that. But every LEA needs to have that resource. And as we look at the others, and when it comes to cyber defense education, we're educators in the K-12 space. And one of the things we have lots of is teachers. And one of the things that we can easily begin to prioritize is a standard based on the fact we need to utilize those teachers to also teach our cyber defense concepts. Each of the rest of these are really very important, and part of them, there's a lot of technical details on why and how they protect different priorities. The last one I'll just mention from a time perspective is this concept of vendor and data protections. One of the concepts that is often overlooked is when we implement a new system or a software for some teaching thing, and in order to make that work, we integrate them or allow them into our system. And when that happens, we begin to give exposure to all of our content. So you had mentioned PowerSchool earlier. That's an example of PowerSchool has information about every single student in those districts that use them. And so when we evaluate those contracts with vendors and different providers, one of the things that we do begin to see is vendors kind of say, well, this is the way it comes, whether you like it or not. One of the things we've seen other states do have been to dictate in statute, these are the types of security standards or agreements you have to do in order to do business in Utah. And that's an example of something where legislative support of helping define these are the standards both for vendors as well as LEAs can significantly kind of help us to move that needle towards that. One of the things we obviously talk about the fact that there's costs when cybersecurity incidents happen. One of the things that really becomes challenging is it's not just the data and it's not just the cost, but it's that erosion of public trust. When something has happened, our patrons and our parents and our students become very nervous and want to know what we're doing as an institution and how to best protect them. And when that comes up, it's really challenging for us to overcome that and rebuild that trust. And so the less of those we just have altogether is ideal. Unfortunately, we've seen when major incidents happen, it often eliminates instruction time. And so students lose opportunities to be in class and be educated. So, there's plenty of things to talk about in this area, but essentially from the people that have to make it work perspective, the message from us is the conversation about whether we can afford it or should do it should be done. And the conversation now is if we don't, the building's going to burn down. And that's kind of the thought on that. But that's kind of what I prepared. If there's other questions or thoughts, please, I'm happy to answer those.
Thank you for being blunt about it. Like this is, it gets less attention for sure, right? It's not as interesting to the news or whatever when these things happen. I think we become desensitized to because it happens so often. T-Mobile's records get compromised or whatever else. One thing that's super important to remember with these, I think the last estimate I heard from our partners on the law enforcement side is that last year they were giving me estimates of 6x what adult information goes for. Now it's 9 and 10x what the kids' data is selling for on the dark web, which means there's just that much more incentive, right, to target their clean Social Security numbers, their clean profiles. We have bad actors all over the world who see the value in that and are willing to compromise our kids before they even have a chance to enter adulthood. So it's not an exaggeration to say we can decide whether we can afford the consequences, and it's way beyond liability for a school district or in any of the information that may even be housed there. We're talking about the future viability of their adult lives and whether they start out with illegitimate debts and all sorts of other things that have been done in their names. So I appreciate your candor in having the conversation with us. You guys have, when I met with you after the presentation, you guys did exactly what I hoped that our organizations would do, and you went to work. I said, tell me what we're missing. And I genuinely appreciate that that's what happened. And thank you for that. I have a few questions. Senator Milner?
Yes.
Okay.
So this is kind of taking this up a next level, but as we look at AI tools, what implications do you see for that in being able to keep our systems secure? Because it just feels like we have a lot more tools out there for people to actually attack our systems.
Probably the biggest impact of a lot of those artificial intelligence tools is it's lowered the barrier of entry for those who want to attempt to attack or do inappropriate things. So we see things as simple as phishing emails used to be super easy to say, look, bad grammar, or it's worded funny.
Right.
Not so much anymore. Those indicators aren't as effective. So I would certainly say it's lowered the barrier to entry. It's not good for a cybersecurity perspective. It enables our attackers significantly more than the speed of which we're able to enable our defenders in the same way.
But if we had consistent implementation of these standards, do you think that's sufficient? I mean, at least for what we know right now.
Effective implementation of these standards would significantly raise the water level in the state of protection. One of the things that anybody in charge of a cybersecurity budget will tell you is they always want some more. For me, the message and the perspective is we've got to get the level up so that we are less appealing and less easy to attack. It's not necessarily the polite way to say it, but the faster we are and we're less low-hanging fruit, than the other people can do that, and we can continue to learn from that. But we've got to get ahead instead of behind.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. Oh, and maybe let me just ask one other question. How, if you wanted to monitor this over time, back to Randy's discussion, how could you kind of efficiently monitor that progress over time across our districts and charter schools?
There's a couple of ways that can be done and benefited. The penetration test that UEN mentioned that they help us do by coming into our LEAs, I'm particularly grateful for them. It created my job position 5 years ago, so I'm a big fan of them. But one of the things that they didn't mention is if I were to call them today and say I'd like to have another one, the waiting list is about 2 years. And so in some aspects of that, funding and availability to have those more often significantly helps to move that bar. The other piece is an aspect of accountability and reporting in terms of where we at on these standards. As a recipient of every audit everybody just talked about, they're all asking different questions and looking at different standards. One of the things that could be helpful is, this is the standard in Utah. Where are you on this standard, and what are you doing to meet the standard?
So then we audit to standards, or we do compliance checks to standards, or whatever.
And the best way to get an LEA to do something is if you give them funding, if they respond to the audit and give you a good plan, it helps.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we talk about the, incident response, what that even looks like. And my experience is that that's not standardized either, right? We're kind of all over the place. And I think what we're really looking at from what we've heard isn't just, these are the 7 things that we can do or implement and train on. It's also consistent understanding of what we're going to be held accountable to, and making sure that those plans are in place on the cyber side as well as the physical security side.
Yeah, and I would tell you, it's not. This is a cool story, but also a challenging one all at the same time. So, it was mentioned about a smaller district earlier who was experiencing an incident. Our security group, that's just the IT security professionals in the state, we knew about it. We called the individual responsible and said, okay, what do you need or resource you don't have? By that afternoon, we had personnel from 2 different districts and a different district's van driving out there to assist in that. And that's a really cool story about how we're making it work, but it's gotten to the point of desperation on the same side that in order to make it work, everybody has to just quit worrying about whose responsibility it is and just get it fixed. And we're happy to continue to do that, but it also means we need help to do that more effectively.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for your work.
Yeah.
We appreciate that.
That's exactly how it happens in the law enforcement world too. Thank you. I don't see any other further questions, but thank you for your presentation today.